Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman may inquire.
Can any member rise, Mr. Speaker, and move to suspend the rules and pass H.Res. 72 prior to the rule being called up?
That's what? That is within the chair's power of recognition. Today is not a suspension day.
Further parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
Gentleman may
Speaker.
inquire.
Is there any provision in H.Res. 72 that will create jobs?
Not a parliamentary inquiry, and the chair cannot answer.
The gentleman will state his point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I object to consideration of this bill because it violates Rule 21 of Section 11, which requires a 72-hour layover of the bill and it to be electronically noticed in order for it to be considered by this House. This bill did not lay over for 72 hours. It was noticed at 1:42 p.m. on Tuesday. Therefore, it has to wait to 1:42 on Friday to be in compliance with the rules of the House.
A point of order against consideration of H.R. 1076 is not timely until such time as the bill is called up.
Mr. Speaker, point of parliamentary inquiry.
The gentleman will state his parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, as you know, we're about to consider the rule that members need to, if they're to vote on it and understand it, need to know that they're waiving the rule. This is the statement of the Speaker of the House. I will not bring a bill to the floor that hasn't been posted online for at least 72 hours. Would the Speaker please clarify for the body that the 72 hours rule is either being waived or does not exist?
The period of time on which the rule is predicated is not a number of hours, but rather a number of days.
Stop holding this government hostage and stop using these controversial social riders as ransom. We need to keep this government going. We need to get a deal. Take this net neutrality bill off the floor today. Instead, bring a clean CR so we can all vote and keep this government running so we get a final deal.
Order. Not necessarily out of concern for unfunded mandates, although there are likely many in this bill. I raise a point of order because it's the only vehicle we've got to actually talk about this rule and this bill and how we're being denied the ability to actually offer the amendments that we would like to illuminate what's actually in this bill. The Republican spending bill badly damages our fragile economic recovery, according to 300 economists of all political stripes, and threatens to send us spiraling into another Republican recession. And as we have heard earlier this week, the Republican answer to 14 million Americans who lost their jobs and can't find new ones is stop talking about jobs. So, at this time, I'd like to yield. This time, I'd like to yield to the gentleman, Mr. Woodall, for 15 seconds to ask him just a simple question.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I'd be happy to answer that question.
I'd like to ask the gentleman, how many jobs does this bill create?
By eliminating the crushing federal deficit that we have today, by taking the first steps we've seen in a generation to take the government out of capital markets and put the private sector back in?
I'll reclaim my time. I do appreciate the gentleman's decision not to answer my question.
Is there objection?
Madam Speaker, is there
Gentleman from Michigan.
objection to what? I mean, a point of order.
Is any bill? The gentleman from New York wishes to be heard on the point of order.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, as we all know here, we have a special rule in the House. As I just referenced, it's Clause 5B of Rule 21. That was put into the rules of the House to make it extraordinarily difficult for us to change tax rates. The reason we did that was out of a bipartisan consideration that we wanted to make sure that legislation we did here didn't have the effect, under the ruse of some other action, of changing effective tax rates for people. So this rule was put into place that said if you're going to do that, you need to have a 3/5 majority. What we're considering now is, by its action, changing people's effective tax rate. We have that says that the movement within tax brackets is subject to a higher order. And let me also make this argument in support of the point of order. The gentleman does not control the time. Point of order. I'm on my feet to a point of order. I cannot be taken off my feet by anyone except the chair. I would urge the respect of the gentleman.
The chair will continue hearing the gentleman from New York.
The reason why this is so important that we enforce now is, just as we all have in our rules the annotations of when this rule has been bent and broken, we don't want to, at the beginning of this Congress, one of the earliest actions we do is bend and break and leave in shatters the 3/5 requirement. This is a clear case where the changes, and you might believe it's a good thing to do, I just think there should be at least 3/5 of us under the rules that we agreed upon to raise the tax bracket, particularly since it's on middle-class Americans. When you're making $80,000 a year and you make an extra $200 in income, they want to increase your tax bracket. If we're going to do that, let's make sure it's with a 3/5 majority. And I urge that the point of order be upheld, and we have to vote on this by 3/5.
Gentleman from New York, Mr. Crowley, wishes to be heard on the point of order
On the
specifically.
On the point of order, Madam Speaker, specifically, let me just clarify for my friends on the other side, and on our side of the aisle as well, for all members of the House, that the House rules, Clause 5B of Rule 21 states that passage again of a tax increase needs a 3/5 majority of those present for passage. If we are changing the tax rate or the brackets of individuals, I know it's not, again, comfortable, but as the example I laid out in the debate, which was not refuted by anyone, if an individual earning $88,000 of a family of 4 receives a $250 bonus, that would require them to pay $4,460 in tax, is indeed a new tax, and therefore should be subject to this rule, that we would require 3/5. I know it's hard, because that's the difficulty of this in changing the tax rates. It should be difficult. That's the rule, to make this bipartisan, that we do this together, a 3/5 vote. And Madam Speaker, we are changing the tax rates, we are changing the brackets, and therefore this rule ought to be imposed.
Across town, the GOP pushing its one-week $12 billion stopgap bill through the House. Little chance does it stand in the Senate, and if it does pass there, the president already vowed to veto it, and if they get it done, it's good for a week. So what are we talking about? Majority Leader Eric Cantor also telling House lawmakers to keep their weekend open for last-minute developments. The pro wrestling theater at an epic height on this fine debate. Debate over the impasse and just the mention of the Tea Party sparking fireworks on the floor.
Tea Party on your side, as so often is the case.
Mr. Speaker, reclaiming my time. I would say let us look at why we are where we are to begin with.
House will come to order.
We have little doubt on our side of the aisle why we're where we are today.
I'm reclaiming my time.